To mark Professor Klomp's first 5 years in CQUniversity's top job, we are asking him some questions about the highlights and challenges and what makes him tick as he looks to the future as a leader. So what advice would you give to CQUniversity's next generation of leaders?
Okay. Looking back on it the last 5 years, I was nervous for reasons I didn't need to be, because I thought that I perhaps would have to be a different sort of person. But it was so busy for those first few weeks, Barb, that actually there was no room to be anything other than yourself. And of course, isn't that the most important thing as a leader? Just be authentic. And people will soon tell you if they agree or disagree, and you can adjust your plans accordingly. So that would be my biggest bit of advice. Be authentic. And then be very clear with what we stand for. What's the mission? What's the vision that you're sharing with everybody? And for us, it's to be Australia's most inclusive university. Access and participation to less represented groups, making sure that the regions in Australia get a voice and get recognised in policy and in funding. I often say that I have to be twice as loud to be half as heard in some of the corridors of power. I'm okay with that, and that would be my advice to the emerging leaders. Just make sure that you are heard, particularly not just for yourself, not just for the university, but for the regions more generally across Australia.
Excellent. So I've got a couple of other questions that I thought I'd ask for our leaders and for anybody generally who wants to potentially become a Vice-Chancellor or go into a leadership role. In the last 5 years, I have never seen you lose your cool, despite the fact that we have had many a crisis, whether it be a natural disaster with fires or with floods or with cyclones. You've never lost your cool even when we've given you some bad news. How do you do that?
Yeah, so I guess it starts by, it's not my nature to be angry, but then there's a whole logical side to this as well, Barb, which is, what are you trying to achieve? And as a leader, one of the most important things is to have a vision. And people, they might agree or disagree with bits of it, but if you are committed to it, people will get behind that vision and say, I see my role. It might only be a small part of that role, but I see how my role fits into that vision. So that's really important. If you react by yelling or screaming or hitting the wall, people start saying, well, it doesn't sound like he's got that vision anymore, or it doesn't sound like he's got a clear pathway. It sounds like he's panicking, or it sounds like he's blaming others or shooting the messenger. All the things that are really a terrible thing to do. It's illogical for starters, but it doesn't engender that confidence that people want, that they're following a leader. So there are plenty of times that I go home and go, oh, this was a really tough day. Absolutely, doesn't everyone go through that? But it's important, even and perhaps even especially during the tough times, that you remind yourself, what's the goal? And does everyone else need reminding? What's the goal? And if there's a roadblock, we're going to go around the roadblock. And if there's another one, we're going to find another way. But we're never going to lose sight of the goal. And as a leader, I'm going to maintain that confidence and that stability and encourage others to get behind it. I think that's just sort of a logical thing to do, but perhaps it's in my nature as well. I don't get angry readily, that's for sure.
So Nick, a question that I get asked repeatedly is, do you wear anything but suits?
Yes, I know. And it's funny because I worry about it as a professor of environmental science. It isn't logical for me to wear things that aren't conducive with the environment. There's a couple of things about that, and I might be an old fuddy-duddy about this, but so often we have people turn up unexpectedly, politicians visiting folk, you know, and I've been caught out a few times in my previous roles. And I also think that for me as a leader, if I can represent a bit of a standard, I'm not suggesting people should wear suits. I've just got into this habit of wearing a suit all the time. It does mean that sometimes I've got the fan in my office on a little bit higher.
So another thing that I've heard from your office is that sometimes people can be clomped. What does that mean?
Okay. I actually have heard that term before. I think it means that they come in and they're wondering about a certain issue, and I'm enthusiastic about that issue, and so it's hard to ignore my enthusiasm. And I hope I don't just talk people around and they haven't had their say, but mostly people, if they see enthusiasm and they share the vision or can help share the vision over time once I've chatted with them, I hope that being clomped means that they walk away going, you know what, I get what he's after, and let's see whether we can all get behind it.
Oh, I think it's a term of endearment. And then my last question, and probably the most important one, is who's your favourite on the exec?
Oh, I don't think I need to say that, Barb. I think it's pretty obvious to everybody.
Thank you so much, Nick. We really appreciate it.